permission to speak. Shadows hide you. I am listening. Our paths converge.
So good to see you.
Hail to you! Never lose hope.
Here, Fred Shadows.
I hear you. It has only begun. Fight on, friend!
Welcome to episode 465 of Concede, our Hearthstone podcast dedicated to making the competitive side of the game more accessible to you. It is Thursday, September 19th, 2024 in the evening. Coming to you from Nomergan, Ohio, it's me, Edelweiss. From Northrend, Massachusetts, we have Wickedgood.
Hi.
And from all around the world, we have you, dear listeners. Magesa is out this week for her wedding. Everyone give her a big congratulations. But we're holding down the fort.
Whoa, legendary!
So this week's episode, of course, is brought to you by our producers, Number Theory, Kresh, Beef Squatch, David P., Walu, Jeremy T., Bottlecaps, Grumpy Monk, The Burger Club, Kirk Regan, Grizzly Bear, May, and SSJ5 Goku. And by our patrons of the week, Gobin and The Doctor's Link. You can go to patreon.com/coinconcede to get perks like a thank you at the top of the show, early access to new episodes, one-on-one coaching sessions, and help support the show in the process. If you would like to support the show but cannot do so monetarily, please consider leaving us a 5-star review on your podcast feed of choice, as it always helps other people find the show. So Life and Ladder, I guess I'll start. I have been messing around with Death Rattle Warlock, because no one else will, I guess.
I mean, somebody has to do it, I suppose.
Yeah, a couple of variations. One is more of the get out heavy hitters kind of thing, which of course, struggles a little more with the faster stuff. And that, I think it's like, if the mage doesn't have the hand, right? I can usually get there because at a certain point, my stuff is so huge and there's so many 8-drops that what are their water elementals going to do? But if they have, the Skyla into Conman, like so many other decks, that's just it. So, that one's okay. I had another one that's much faster that has Corpsicle and, just gets a bunch of, runs like 6/1 drops, a bunch of 2s. It really is all about snowballing after sticking a Brittlebone Buccaneer, I think it's called.
Yeah.
One that gives stuff reborn. That is a card. Like, you set that up, you coin it out, whatever, and then you protect it with the Rusher, which, giving that reborn, you get another Rusher, and like that. It's so many corpses. It's so much like board control. It's amazing. And then from there, I've got like the Moarg Excavate taunt thing is a death rattle, and I've got the thing that discounts your next location because I've got Horizon's Edge in there, of course. It's Warlock cosplaying as Death Knight. And sometimes you get to do the cube thing of actually playing the tourist into a ravenous kraken, and you multiply a thing. But the most fun is when they don't kill Eliza, or like I've given Eliza reborn or whatever, and then I cubicle the Eliza, and
oh yeah, that'll work.
The deck runs Leroy. It's fun. I had a decent record with it. I think in its various forms, I went 11-6 with that one.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
You are going to have to remember to put the deck code in the show notes this time, because Magesa is not going to be around this week to badger you into doing that.
It's true.
Usually it's her tenaciousness that gets the deck codes into the show notes, but I'm inevitably going to forget.
Yeah, I'll put the good one in the show notes, which is to say the Corpsicle one. I think it's still probably at best tier 2, but it's fun, it's different, and I just wasn't feeling the other stuff. I do like the version of Mage that you'll be mentioning.
Yeah.
That sort of I like that one best, but still just like wasn't feeling it. And then in other life stuff, I ran my first session of D&D for the Descent into Avernus campaign, which is kind of the events that happen right before the Baldur's Gate 3 game. So, you know, it's my first time running as a DM, so obviously I've got some kinks to work out, but I am consuming so much content on like advice and how to do things and spending so much time writing out articles on World Anvil so that they have all the information about like the various characters and things going on. I'm just finding myself like constantly just oh man, the next session isn't for 2 weeks. What am I gonna do?
Oh yeah.
And I've got a whole second table that I might not be running that campaign. I'll be running something else. I've been so into this that I was like, I wonder if I can get a group of people in person to play. And I don't know what I'm going to run for them. We're going to have our session 0 on Friday. And I think I'm still going to basically go into every week like, oh God, I have to wait 5 days before I can.
You're sounding like me and Commander. Like that's like the same thing. Cause it's like, oh, so I get to go to the store on Sunday and it's like, I'll get 2 games in. It's like, oh, now I have to wait another week. Like, okay.
Yeah. Probably takes the same amount of time too.
It can, yeah. I mean, depending on your sessions probably do go longer because I like don't eat before. So I get hungry after like 3 hours, but yeah.
Yeah, I guess we usually go like 3 p.m. to 7 p.m.
Yeah.
Our time.
Yeah.
My time.
So I'm usually there from like noon to 3. So that's about, it's about usually 2 games if I can get into 2 games, but yeah.
But like it's laid bare for me the stark difference between there's a thing that I want to exist in the world and there's some work that needs to be done to make that happen, but the work is not that enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the other podcast I do that I'm very behind on editing called Yogi and Ever After. I have a bit of a backlog. I need to get those out. It's the same reason I will write a bunch of scripts and heavily edit a thing, preparing to like one day make a YouTube video, and then the prospect of like editing video is so overwhelming that it's just like has not manifested. It's the difference between that and oh wait, I actually like every aspect of this thing. So just all of Leah's naps after everyone goes to sleep, I'm just like, okay, let's write some more articles. Let's set up some more maps with tokens. Let's build contingencies. Let's figure out what magic items I want to give them. It's just like all the different permutations are just things that I enjoy doing. So yeah, I don't think I've really had this for something besides the times when I am really into Hearthstone, right?
Yeah.
Like previously, I mean, there's any game where it comes out and I'm really into it, right? Where that becomes the game that I'm playing.
I mean, one could argue Elden Ring might have gotten close.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's basically like I get this way with every game that I suddenly get into, Baldur's Gate 3, Elden Ring, Sekiro, those kinds of things. And when there's a Hearthstone meta or expansion or whatever that I really, really love. But I didn't quite realize the extent to which this effect was going to hit me for DMing.
Yeah.
And I actually cannot imagine it running out.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like an autistic special interest, to be honest, and that's like all my autistic special interests go, and some of them can go for a very long time. I mean, Hearthstone's been an autistic special interest for me for over a decade, right? So, or maybe not over a decade; it's getting close to a decade. But sometimes it ebbs and flows, but like it's special when you can find something like that too, that you just kind of throw yourself into, and that the challenge is moderating it so that you don't burn out on it, you know,
Right.
because it's very easy to burn out on things like that, especially when it's fueled that way. Like I'm kind of glad that I can only play Commander like a couple times a week, because I definitely would burn out on it. And like
Uh-huh.
I've been and I'm spending a lot of time like just like tinkering with decks, and that's why I've got so many decks going, because like I need things to tinker with. And like I started another one that was, it's getting close to done, but then it's like a reanimator deck, but it's legendary focus. So the commander, every time that a legendary creature dies, it comes back as a zombie token that's not legendary. So then I started, finding all these different things. Okay, well, you can reanimate the original ones. Now you've got a couple of them. You've got death rattle, you've got death triggers. So now I've got things. I had one game the other day where I was like doubling the creature. I got 2 copies of the creature that gives me additional death triggers. And then like, and it was just like triggers on triggers. And then I found that there's like this mechanic from the Lord of the Rings, the ring tempts you.
Uh-huh.
Which makes the creature that becomes the ring bearer legendary. So then I can make the zombie that wasn't legendary, that's no longer legendary again, so that it can come back again. So it's just like, okay, like this is a whole Rube Goldberg machine, and I'm into it. But then it's like, then I start having to tinker around with the deck, and that I go down that whole road and like goldfishing it and everything else. It's like, and then I get to play it like once a week, or maybe, well, no, I shouldn't say once a week, because Mad at Arms I'm in a pod with Mad at Arms and a couple other folks, and so we try to get a game on Spell Table a couple times a week, and that's been fun. But
nice,
it's always good when you get to do it in person. But in Hearthstone, I've been trying a bunch of things. I've been feeling a little bit better until I got sick today. My one of the twins got sick, and like over the weekend, and I warned her that if she got me sick, I would haunt her. And then she got Maureen sick, and then I think Maureen got me sick. But she made me tea, so I told her I would consider not haunting her. I'm drinking tea out of my Murloc mug. So, which I love. I love the Murloc mug. It's my favorite. But so it's enough to make me consider not haunting her. But I've been feeling a little bit better, a little bit more like I can play at a reasonable level. So I've been trying to scratch the control itch, because I realized that a lot of like why I've been feeling kind of down about the game lately is I just haven't been able to play like a control deck like I like to. Like Druid's not a control deck. Druid is just like a mid-range value pile. And even like the Death Knights, like there was like a 5-minute period where I was playing Blood Death Knight, and that felt like I was there until all of a sudden I wasn't. But there was someone who posted a Mech Warrior, and the Mech Warrior is kind of hilarious because you chemical spill a Ziliax out, and then you play the Cubicle, and now you have 2 Unchiliaxes again. And then it's running, I forget which one is the safety expert or the testing dummy. I forget which one it is that does the 8 pings. I think it's testing dummy. Not the one that shuffles the bombs in.
Right.
But so then you do that, so you do that a couple of times, then you have the Cubicle, so you're summoning more of those, and then you have Hydration Station. This is the deck we all expected was going to be a thing. It hasn't been a thing, but it's decent into the mages because you can brawl. So that kind of deals with the boards.
Sure.
And like if you put out an Unchiliax, then every time that they run into it, like sometimes it freezes it, sometimes it doesn't, but they still have to heal you when they're trading through it. So it kind of cancels out a lot of the damage. But I ran into Kibler, and Kibler was playing Reno Priest.
What?
And Kibler ran me. Oh yeah, he ran me way the hell out of stuff.
Oh no.
And so then somebody in the Discord posted a Reno Priest yesterday, and I'm like, okay.
Your weakness.
I mean, I'm nothing if not predictable. So I did try it. It's got, I have to look up the list. I have it I don't even remember what it was doing. I mean, it's got Elise and a bunch of other Elise accessories, right? Like it was running Mixologist and Zephyrus. Zephyrus got me a couple of well-timed like hexes or whatever that, and occasionally it would get like a Mass Dispel that felt pretty good. And, like it has things that it can do. It was not really doing what I would have liked it to do. It's running like a Parrot Sanctuary. Hot Coals is not fantastic, but it's in there. You run Puppet Theater and then another one in the ETC. You got Sasquatch to be able to replay all the stuff that you played. It's a control deck, but it really plays like a value pile, and it was just not really. It was working until it wasn't, and then it was kind of like, okay, whatever. But then today, there's a couple people who've been tinkering around with the orb versions of Big Spell Mage, and today, Guion, who posts a lot of the decks from Chinese players, I think they are going to continue doing it once China opens up next week, because next week is China's opening back up for Hearthstone. But they've been posting a lot of those decks, and they posted a deck from LVGE that is running in the orb, but it's running orb in ETC. And the reason you're running orb in ETC is so that if you have Skyla, you don't hit the orb with the ETC and then completely waste the Skyla, which is nice. And you don't really need orb in every game. Like, it's got a Dirty Rat and a Star Power in the ETC also for those other, scenarios. And then you're not running like the bad cards. Like, you're not running Greedy Partner. And some of the other things that just make it so all in. And you're not running Greedy Partner, you're not running Surfalapod, you're not running the 6 mana draw spell, summon a minion thing. But you get to run the Primordial Rune, Primordial
Glyph.
Primordial Glyph. I don't know why I thought it was Primordial Rune. Primordial Glyph. And so that gives you stuff to do in the early game. And you also run Star Power. So because when you're doing Orb, you want to set up Star Power into Sunset Volley into Tsunami. And that's usually a lot of damage, unless their board is completely ginormous. And that's been working out really well for me. It's been beating some of the decks that I shouldn't be beating with Big Spell Mage. I think I'm like 7-4 with it right now. So I was just jamming, and that was just games that I was jamming in like an hour or so before the podcast. So I've been liking that a lot. Like, I always really did like the orb decks. They just weren't good enough. And then by the time the Big Spell Mage finally came around, it was this. And I don't really like this deck bores me. Like the real Big Spell Mage bores me, because it's just like the same thing. And it's like, it's like Bart Simpson saying, I'm just gonna swing my arms, and if you don't get out of the way, then you're gonna get hit. So it's like, that's not what I'm into. But this has more actual decision points, and it feels like it's a little bit more flexible of a game plan and plays more like a control deck that has some actual, or maybe like mid-range to control. I don't know if it really feels, sometimes it feels more mid-range, sometimes it feels more control-y. But it feels like it can hang with a lot of the decks that the regular Big Spell Mage just got run over by. You probably still get destroyed by a Painlock, but like well, actually, maybe not, because you can find things off of the glyph that can get in the way of those big minions hitting you. So maybe, and like you also run Reverb, which helps with some of those, because you're not worrying about, well, all my spells have to be huge because I'm playing Surfalapod and the 6 mana spell. So Then you can run some smaller spells and then be able to actually respond to some things in the mid game, which is nice.
Yeah, I played sort of an earlier version that was like Stinzy's list.
Yeah.
And I do like having Rising Waves, I think it's called, right? The 3 cost clear. Like, that's a really nice clear, and especially if you're getting that replayed. And so you go Rising Waves into Star Power, clears basically anything. And then I don't love the Norganon. I don't know how it felt for you.
It felt okay. I did get to Reverb lethal somebody with it today, which was fun.
I think that's why they're there, right? There's one Reverb, there's Norganon. I sort of go instead in the direction of running Firelands Portal, because then if that's in the orb, right, you go Portal, Volley, Tsunami is just an extra 6 damage. Maybe it's not necessary, but it just sort of felt better to me. I like filling out all the slots if I can in the portal. So
yeah, I can see that. And I kind of want to cut Khadgar for a Firelands Portal.
Sure.
Because Khadgar sucks. Like, he's such an idiot. Like, it's just like, I just like, there's a full board that's all like 5 health. Like, can you just play a board clear just once? Just play a board clear. Like, you've got 2 of them. Pick one. I don't care which one. They're both good. The one time he flame striked the board like that was when they were all above 5 health. That was the only time that he's flame striked the board like that. And it's like, just play a Blizzard. It's fine. Like that's what you're there for. And it just like never does what you want it to do. And it's like such a tempo loss to do it. And when you have that weapon out, then you can't play the metal detectors. Or I mean, you can, but then you're losing out on all the value. So like, what's the point?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So I think I kind of like the idea of like a Firelance portal instead of that, just to get a little bit more oomph in the orb when you play it. Because yeah, I mean, Norganon is kind of, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Like it, I haven't really gotten to use it a lot. When I have gotten to use it, it's been straight up for lethal, which is not bad. But yeah, it's not the greatest, but certainly Khadgar. Like I played Khadgar a couple times. And it's just like, why am I doing this? Like if I want to make poor decisions, I can do that on my own. I don't need Khadgar to do it for me. Like, but what we're going to do a lot more talking about Big Spell Mage, in particular about how to play against it, because you really don't need a guide on the deck. I mean, the deck is fairly on rails, but playing against it is something that it's not quite as prevalent as it was. It started out at like 30% popularity. I think it's down to like 15 at Legend now. So it's still there a fair amount, but it's not there as much. But you're still going to see it a fair amount, and being able to have a plan to play against it or have a strategy to deal with the meta that's kind of defined by Big Spell Mage, even if it's not dominated by it, is something that's important. But we've got a little bit of news and a little bit of tournaments to talk about before we get there. So let's get into that.
Gadgets and Gazette always gets the scoop.
And when I say a little bit of news, I mean a little bit of news. It's been like spookily quiet this week. We know that they were planning for a balance patch for 2 weeks out after the mini set launch, which was probably going to be around next week. That was the cadence that they had they laid out for the original launch, and they're keeping with that for the mini set. So we're not expecting any sort of balance patches. We haven't heard anything yet. Expecting that next week. I mean, certainly they're probably going to do something about Big Spell Mage, and then who knows what else they're going to have considered to be, a threat to balance by the time we get there. But there's been no news about that. There's been no real other events or anything else. And it seems like we're kind of in the calm before the storm before we get to the new expansion, but we'll see. We still have a balance patch before we get there, but we did have a couple of shop updates. There is a new Diamond Dream Planner Zephyrus bundle in the shop. That's $60 USD or 6,000 rune stones. That's coming with with the Diamond Zephyrus and then 2 signature cards. So again, if that's something that you're interested in, now it's worth noting that if you have the Diamond Zephyrus, then all of the cards that it generates will be diamond or the best possible. So I mean, there aren't. I would imagine like some of those Rogue and Druid cards are probably in there. I forget that got like the signature treatments, but it's got to be like a Brawl or something because the Warrior got one too. But even if you don't have the signature cards for those, like you'll still get Goldens. So if that's something that you're interested in, that's available for you. And if you need the signatures, then they're there. There's also well, I thought I put both of these images in, but it looks like I only caught one of them. But there's a couple of new portraits in the shop. Steampunk Lanethel is the new, that's the new Death Knight portrait. And that is very cool. That is $10 or 1,000 rune stones, and that comes with 5 Death Knight packs. The other one is Halvaria Steam Raven, which is a Demon Hunter portrait. Again, $9.99 or 1,000 rune stones. And that comes with the Halvaria Steam Raven Hero Skin and 5 Demon Hunter packs. So those are both pretty cool. Halvaria, I love Halvaria because she says wicked a lot. So, that's that's a good enough reason for me to like Halvaria, though I don't know if I played Demon Hunter enough to justify buying it. But the Steampunk Lanethel looks very cool. So, but that's it. That's all the news. So, yeah, we're going to go into a very little bit of tournament news.
It's the grand tournament!
So this will also be shorter. Not that it isn't short every week, but Magesa being out, we don't have the lowdown on the Concede listener series stuff, but there is something else going on this weekend, which will be perhaps partially finished by the time you're hearing this, but Solary Party is this weekend. Those who don't recall, Solary is a French team, probably, I want to say, the biggest third-party organizer at this point, or at least
They're one of the only ones now. Yeah.
yeah, they consistently do stream their tournaments. They usually do invitationals, right? In this case, they tweeted out a cute little I don't know, what would we call this? Flyer? I mean, a Twitter post, right?
Yeah.
It says, Solary Party Summer Camp, Les Invités. Probably my French pronunciation is terrible, but...
Better than mine,
you know,
so...
The invitees, Baby Bear, Jombre, Dizdemon, Gaboom, Tars, Otsuna, Odemian, and Fino. You know, a mix of a bunch of the French players and then other people in the EU region. These are always a ton of fun to watch, and yeah, are generally a good way of getting a sense of what's competitive or what things would look like in a Conquest format, given the minimal presence of those in the public eye these days, with 3 Masters Tours this year, one of which being Worlds. So, yeah, definitely check it out if you like competitive Hearthstone. I don't know if there will be an English.
Fino's streaming it in English.
Okay, there we go. Yeah. Fino's got her back.
Yeah. And this I think this is the one where they throw people in the pool and do the mini games in between matches and stuff like that. So it's a fun time.
Yeah.
In general. And there's, there are a lot of good European players that are participating. Baby Bear, Jombre, and I believe Tic Tac's going. Fino's there, obviously, a few other folks. So it's a fun tournament to watch. It's as close to Seat Story as we get now. And Seat Story was always my favorite tournament to watch, because you just get to see all the players casting each other and just generally having fun and not taking things too seriously, which was always a good time.
Definitely feels like the spiritual successor. But yeah, that's tournaments. So I guess that will just bring us right into the meat of it, which is talking about Mage. So we didn't mark who was going to run this section. It's still in...
Well, usually you do it, because usually the news is a lot more talking than it was this week. But I mean, I can start it off. So, and we kind of led into it already, many hours ago before news and Decksplanations and news and tournaments. But Big Spell Mage is the meta defining deck of the format, right?
Meta warping.
And meta warping to some extent. But it's not the only deck you can play by any stretch of the imagination. It's effectively a 50% deck, but it is very popular, and it's very popular more so because it's new than it is because it's powerful, but also it's consistent and does what it does the thing fairly consistently. And when it does the thing and there's no answer for it, then it will get you wins when it probably doesn't have any reason to otherwise. But it also is disruptible. There are plenty of decks that have decent win rates into it. And if you don't want to play that deck, then there are other things that you can do. So we're going to have this deck in the meta for at least another week. And the nerfs that they give to decks like this are generally not it's not like Turtle Mage, right? When that was a deck that shouldn't have existed and they nerfed that thing into the ground. I don't necessarily believe that they're going to nerf Big Spell Mage into the ground, because they clearly wanted this deck to exist, right? They built this deck, they printed cards specifically to make an archetype like this exist. I just don't think they thought it was going to be as good as it was, or as fast as it was, right? So we're still going to have Big Spell Mage, and it may not be quite as prevalent, but it's going to be prevalent for at least the next week. So what do you do if you want to try to climb in this meta.
Why don't you cover option 1? Because this is
Okay.
the one I don't
So-
like.
Well, the obvious way to do it is learn to love the mirror, right? So just play the deck. It's the deck, and then jam it and do what you're going to do with it. Now, there are ways to tech the deck for the mirror. There's some versions that have been running like Cult Neophytes and Speaker Stompers to try to get ahead of the opponent's turns or disrupt, say, if they play a King Tide on 4, then you can play and you don't have something to play into it, then you can play a Speaker Stomper and cut off their turn. That sort of thing.
Although I will say, probably don't play a King Tide on 4 in the mirror.
Probably don't.
Like,
yes.
I don't keep King Tide if I'm up against a mage because it's just so dangerous. It's like it's more risk than it's worth because you're giving them the opportunity before you get it for yourself.
Right.
At least playing on curve. If you're on 9 mana, fine, because you can use it right away. But it's actually to the point that I would guess that Skyla has the higher mulligan win rate, like insane. It's what, like 10% higher for the deck than anything else.
Yeah, I would imagine. I haven't looked, but I should look. I'll look while you're talking.
So if they hit Skyla and the play rate of Mage decreases, I would guess that King Tide's win rate goes up because it is bad in the mirror, but still lets you cheat out the stuff on turn 5. And if you're seeing fewer mirrors, then it becomes much better.
Yeah. So I pulled the Big Spell Mage that has the most games on it, the one that just came up first, right? So normally it's funny because, and I think this is just because of we have to talk about differential, right? Because if I just look at the win rate of the deck, then the mulligan win rate for Skyla is actually higher against all decks than it is just against Mage, because like the win rate's closer to 50%. But the if for the normal, against just a generic matchup, Skyla, Cephalopods, and King Tide are 1, 2, 3. Skyla is 71.5%, and the average win rate of the deck is 63.5%. Right. So this is that's actually, I need to limit this to, let me limit this to Diamond through Legend just to get better. That's too high. Okay. So the average, the overall win rate of that deck is 57%. And the win rate of Skyla is 65.5, Cephalopods 59, King Tide's 58. So King Tide and Cephalopods are around the average, win rate of the deck, and Skyla's like 7 points above.
Yeah.
When you look at the mirror, the win rate of the deck is around, it's around 50%, right? Because it's the mirror. So Skyla is 61.8%, which is about 12 points over the average, and King Tide is just at 50%. So it doesn't do anything for you, and it's basically a coin flip whether that, which makes sense. That card's either going to win you the game or it's going to lose you the game on the spot if you play it on 4. So that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, Skyla's like 12 points above in the mirror. It's just that much more important. And Cephalopods like 5%, 5 points above as well. So yeah, don't play King Tide. If you really are, I don't know that it's worth teching into the mirror right now, but if you were going to, you could run some things like Neophytes and Speaker Stompers. It's probably not worth if it's
Early
only
on
50% of the meta. Yeah. But just kind of, you just kind of want to learn the matchup. You want to try to prioritize getting a coin, especially if you're on the coin. You want to be able to get your Skyla out first and then get your Tsunami out first, because whoever's not reacting to that is just going to do more work with them. They're not going to be trading as many water elementals into minions that are going to get frozen. They'll just get to hit face more. It lets you snowball a little bit more. It's a hard life playing the mage into into the mirror. And then you're also going to have to know how to play all the other matchups too. Like all the other matchups that we're going to talk about are all at least to some extent gunning for the Big Spell Mage. Like that's why they're being played. It's not necessarily meta. It's not the best deck in the meta, but it's meta warping in that anything that's going to be played, the first question is, but can it beat Mage?
Yep.
And so all those are going to have a way to do that. So
Yeah.
I guess you can talk about the second one because this is an aggro strategy and that is not my forte. So,
So, yeah, basically option 2, target the bully, right? This is often my approach when I am doing a whole bunch of deck building, right? Is, there's one thing that's really popular, which means I'm going to face it a bunch. What can I build to beat that? And it just so happens the thing that best beats these mages also best beats druids, which is one of the things people are doing to face mages. So that's just, it's the fast aggro decks, right? It's Pirate Death Knight, which has made a big resurgence. Wasn't seeing so much of it before. Now it's
Demon
back.
Hunter.
Sorry,
I do it all the time too.
in fairness, it says DK in the notes.
Oh, does it? That's my
does.
bad. Yeah. So that's my fault then. Yes. It should have said DH. Those are two keys apart from each other on the keyboard.
Yeah. Anyway, Pirate Demon Hunter and Painlock. And those are just, they're fast enough that they can get under it, because oftentimes if they can Scylla or King Tide into the water elementals, that's game over. I think the other piece is sometimes if you're playing one of these decks and they just don't get the right hits on that turn, then you kill them on the backswing.
Yeah.
And, a lot of things are just like trying to recover from that point. So basically, if you invalidate the possibility of Con Man coming down and replaying the thing because they have died, then your situation looks a lot better.
Yeah. And I mean, it's also the fact that you're not letting the mage play their game plan, right? Like if they don't have Tsunami in play, then they have to play a watercolor artist to get one. But that's a 3-mana 3/3. And that's pretty hard to do if you're facing down like a 4/4 and several 3/3s and maybe a giant, probably not a giant by turn 3, but threatening a giant on turn 3, right? That's so even if the mage gets to just do what they want to do, they can't really just play like Gold Panner into Seashill or Watercolor Artist into Skyla. Like they can't do that as often because they need several things in hand to make that happen. And they want to be able to draw and play a Gold Panner, play a Watercolor Artist. Like you can't do that against an aggro deck because they're just going to ignore it and kill you. And then it doesn't matter what you've drawn because you don't have the time to play it. So that's the other thing that those decks do for you, is not only does it just kill the mage before they can actually get their turn, but it, even if you need another couple turns, it disrupts their plan enough that they can't get that off on time in order to be able to swing the board.
Now there is another option here, which is the other direction that I loosely mentioned, and that's to play Druid. Now, you do unfortunately have the same weakness as the mage into this, the Pirate DH and the Painlocks, but if that aggro stuff isn't your jam, Druid has the advantage of they are ramping, and so they can get to high mana stuff pretty quickly as well. There can be advantages to not having minions in the early game because you invalidate the weapon by like just not having anything for it to swing against to give them coins. So if you're playing, Great Heights or Gift into Wild Growth instead of the Whelp, then, you're ramping while they still aren't getting coins into something that has gained popularity recently because it's good against Mage, Dungar.
Yeah.
Or Unkiliax. And as we touched on before, Unkiliax, particularly if you can resurrect it, just shuts that strategy down, right? Like, what are they going to do? And if you are doing Dungar stuff, you also have Beached Whale, which is 20 health. Like, they're just not punching through that. Like, even the Orb one we mentioned would struggle to punch through the stats that Dungar Druid puts out because it's just so much. Like this is sort of hydration station deck as it was intended. Where you're resurrecting Unkiliax, Beached Whale, and I forget what the third one is, but
it's usually running. So it's running Thunderbringer with Rag and the Beached Whale as the beast, and they also run double Factory Assembly Bot, which is the 6/7 with miniaturized that summons a 6/7 at the end of the turn. So that's kind of like Tsunami at home to in some extent. But when you're getting that out with the Dungar, I mean, what you're doing with that. Okay, so this is a little different than the version I was playing, because the version I was playing was just running 2 Oaken summons just for Dorian. So then you Oaken summons with a Dorian and then try to hit Dungar and then just try to get that to go that quickly.
These have the 6/8, right?
Yeah, this one's running the Gloomstone Guardians, which is the 6/8. And like, if you have to blow up a Mana Crystal, who cares? You've already gotten a whole bunch of them because you're running double Crystal Cluster, you're running double Trail Mix, you're running double New Heights, you're running double Gift. You don't run the Dragons, and you just try to get. You also have Yogg in that deck as well, so you can also summon Yogg with the Dungar, and you have Hydration Station, so you get all those back. So you're gonna get back a Gloomstone Guardian, a Thunderbringer, and I'm not sure what and a Beach Whale. So that's a lot of stats, and like a Sunset Volley's not going to get through that. A Tsunami's not going to get through that.
And part of why the 6/8 is so powerful is that 6 is the number for killing water elementals. So they hit into that, it eats 3 of them, which is pretty insane for something you can do on turn 4, recruiting it out. So that is definitely an option that started to become popular. Again, new deck, and has the advantage of a good matchup into the mages. Now, just regular druid stuff can also be quite solid. Just ramping into, Reno druid shenanigans or dragon druid shenanigans, right? Just things that are going to put out on Unkiliax are gonna do fairly well into the mage most of the time.
Same with the Mech Warrior. I mean, that's not something that's like even made the Vicious Syndicate report, but that was something that just getting an Unkiliax out or getting a safety expert out or testing dummy. I forget. I still can't remember. I still can't keep them straight.
Testing
but the testing dummy, and then that's just like, it's a big butt, and then it's a lot of damage that it takes out that gets rid of whatever the minions are that are left, right? So like you can get, and then you have brawls and you have other things that you can do to try to get rid of whatever the board is and then start developing your own board behind it. So yeah, that's another option, though. The Druid is kind of more refined in that regard to be able to do that. The problem that the Druid is going to have is that it needs to draw all of its things in order, and it's also slow, so it dies to a lot of the same things that the Big Spell Mage dies to, which are the aggro decks that are trying to rush it down, because it's a little bit more doable to rush that deck down than it is the Dragon Druid that just has a lot more minions in the mid game other than the Gloomstone Guardian.
Yep. Which brings us to option 3.
Which is if you are a fan of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, put a towel over your head and ignore that Big Spell Mage exists, and then try to target everything else that is trying to target Big Spell Mage.
This is very reminiscent of the sort of tournament lineup dilemma, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, do I bring the 4 best decks? Do I bring the counter lineup, or do I bring the counter lineup? And then you're all the way back to square one, where the best deck lineup maybe beats the counter lineup, but etc.
Yeah, and like the theory is, right, if it's 15% of the meta is Big Spell Mage, then 85% of the meta is not, right? And those decks are trying to go after Big Spell Mage on one of 2 axes, either go under it or go over it. And there's room to target both of those strategies with the other decks that are available in the meta. And there's a lot of them that are relevant for that discussion. Like, so there's actually quite a bit of variety if you're willing to hunt it out and not just get, despondent that everything is Big Spell Mage. Like Odin Warrior is apparently a deck that has started resurgence because of this, because it loses to Big Spell Mage, but like Hainlock and Pirate Demon Hunter are not getting through all that armor. Like
Yeah.
almost never, right? So you can just take the 1 in 8 games that you lose to a Big Spell Mage, but then if you're beating up on everything else, then and the Odin Warrior is good into all of those things, then you're pretty much in a good spot.
And I don't know if they're running the new taunt minion that gains you 3 armor or something whenever it takes damage, but that is a nightmare.
Yeah, I have to look, because I just saw this in the Vicious Syndicate. Yeah, it is Alloy Advisor. Yeah, so it's
Right.
running.
Makes sense. If you're leaning into targeting those matchups, you may as well target them as hard as possible.
Yeah.
So,
And I mean, Sleep Under the Stars is just 15 damage once you have Odin out. So that's pretty decent. I mean, you can also do that with a Razor Fen Rockstar, right? So that's 7, 14, 21. Presumably you have the weapon equipped at that point, or even if you don't, like that's just 21 damage plus a hero power is 25. That's
pretty good.
That's enough. I mean, it's not enough to kill somebody from 30, but you get chip damage in here and there. So that's something that you could definitely consider. Again, like, so you lose the Big Spell Mage because they get under you, but you're not dying to a pirate deck. You're not dying to a Pain Lock because you have removal. You have Blade Storms. You have Safety Goggles, Sanitize, right? You have double Brawl in the deck. You still run Unkiliacs. So you've got removal, and then you just have to armor up and not die until you can get Odin online, then you just swing the board. It's fine. So that's an option.
Yeah, and then we have perhaps the best deck in the meta that no one's playing because it's hard, which is Overheal Priest, which has dethroned the Sonya Rogues as the really good challenging deck to play. Basically, they have a ton of healing, so they're good on that front, and the clear potential of oh gosh, I always forget the name, but the 3/7.
Injured Hauler.
Yep, the clear potential of Hauler is really good, and it's good against the aggro decks, and it's good against the mages. So, and once they have sort of a lull in their defenses, I mean, they aren't typically gaining a bunch of armor, even if it's the orb version with the Sleet Skaters, right? You don't have big, high-power minions for them to gain armor off of, so they don't have a lot of protection against just getting Hedonist comboed. So if you were playing Overheal Priest before or had interest in playing it, it's still a good time to play Overheal Priest. And kind of in a similar vein, Big Shaman, less so on the challenging front, but definitely similar in terms of very underplayed for how powerful it is right now. Big Shaman is really solid. Like, it obliterates the aggro decks.
Yeah, I mean, Cliff Dive is a hell of a card, and so is Frosty Decor, right? Like just being able to put 2 taunts out that gain you 4 life into a Cliff Dive, and if you get the Walking Mountain out of that just heals you right back up. Less so against the Big Spell Mage because it's going to freeze the first, after attacks the first time, but there's usually other things that are on board that you can trade into, and you just have a lot of removal. You just can put you play pop-up books. Sometimes that just eats damage, right? And then the Razzle Dazzler, once you can get that down, that's hard for them to get through. Like they can freeze some of the minions, but you're not going to freeze all of them. Then, even if they do clear it, you probably have drawn another one because you run the location that draws a Battle Cry minion, right? So you can just respond to that with another Razzle Dazzler and then make them deal with that. It's something that a Sunset Volley's not going to get through. even a star power, like I was playing against one today and I couldn't even get through it with like a star power, like an ore, like a fully loaded ore, but I had trouble with one of those boards and then it just developed again. So it's, and you have the time to be able to develop as the big shaman also. Like you sometimes will struggle with some of the faster decks, right? Like because they'll get under you and then you may not have enough time, right, to be able to do what you're trying to do. But against the big spell mage, you have time. And then by the time that they're going off, you're about to go off also. And your going off is generally better than they're going off.
Yeah. And Walking Mountain's a heck of a card. Like, yes, the aggro decks can get through your defenses because you have expensive stuff, and sometimes you'll draw things in the wrong order. But I think just having access to Frosty Decor, like you mentioned, Volcano, and if you hit Walking Mountain, they're done. You kill 4 things and gain 16 life. Like, that's... aggro decks do not come back from that.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I will say with Overheal Priest, you have to really want to learn that deck because it is favored into Big Spell Mage the higher up in ranks you go. But like Vicious, again, like they talked about this in the Vicious Syndicate report and they recommended it as their deck of the week. And they're not wrong. But I do think that the reason that it's underplayed is because there are a lot of people who play it and then give up on it before they learn it.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of losing in order to be able to get good with Overheal Priest. Like I've played it a bunch and I'm still bad with it. And there's some situations where it's just like, even when you're experienced with it, sometimes it's just like too many thinkies to be able to play it well. Like I've not been playing it the last couple weeks just because like I know I can't handle it. Like I've played it, I know what to do for the most part, but like it's a lot of thought, a lot of thinking in the moment, and like my brain's not moving fast enough with, you know, the work situation and everything. So it's something that even like if you're experienced with it, it's situational whether you're going to be able to have those kinds of results. Though eventually it becomes muscle memory. And there's also been, I mean, also you could just go into Blood DK also, which is, if you really want to go, I mean, that's basically going like the Odin route, right? If you just want to outlast everything and, okay, well, I'm just going to Vampiric Blood and now I don't have to worry about all this damage anymore. And then you have Corpse Explosions and Threads and everything else that you would want in order to clear those boards, and then you just wait till you stabilize and you heal all that damage up, or maybe you play a Primus on their giant or whatever, and then you just kind of, you know, destroy their will to live, which is my favorite way to play. Not necessarily with that deck, but you know, destroying the opponent's will to live is my favorite win condition.
But it is basically a try and beat up on the aggro decks, and you go like 50-50 with the mages. I think because, you know, you do have those strong clears and they don't always have Skyla. And if they are a bit slower, once you like get down a pretty decently charged up Rainbow Naga, we're doing great on names today.
Razzle Dazzler.
Razzle Dazzler. Wow, I really should not be forgetting that one. Yeah, once you have a decently charged up Razzle Dazzler, it like the mage doesn't want their water elementals to be hitting stuff. They want them to be hitting face. So it can be a much easier time if you can stick one of those and have a big threatening board, and then they're forced to, I mean, they're usually trying to play it as soon as possible anyway, but you know, they play their Tsunami into your board. That's going to be a lot better situation for you. Again, just still 50-50 matchup there, but you beat up on the aggro decks.
Yeah, but I mean, also like you're playing like Corpse Explosion takes a little while to get ramped up. Soul Stealer is very late. Primus is very late. A lot of your removal before then is dealing with smaller boards, which is where you're good against like the early stuff from a Painlock, or you're good against all the pirates. But like Malted Magma isn't doing much against 3/6s.
Yeah,
and like you have Death Strike, but that's only going to deal with one, and then you still have the other 3. So that's where the removal package doesn't necessarily do well into Big Spell Mage, but it does well into all the other things that are trying to kill it. So that's that's another option.
Now, this one, I'm not sure why we have it under the targeters. Maybe it should be under, an option 2 sort of thing, but the Reno or Egg Hunter in general, right? That, I don't know that necessarily goes after the things that are targeting Mage. I feel like it targets Mage reasonably.
Well, according to Vicious Syndicate, all of the hunters are unfavored except for the Token Hunter.
Really?
Token Hunter, which is more aggressive, that's got like a 64% win rate. At Legend, the Secret Hunter, the Egg Hunter, and the Reno Hunter are all like even to unfavored. Like 48%, 45%, 50. The Secret Hunter's like 52%. So
yeah.
But
that makes sense to me.
The Egg Hunter does well into like a lot of the other stuff. Like it does very well into like the Blood Death Knights. It's doing well into
okay.
It's actually not. Yeah, it's not great into the Demon Hunter, but it is. Oh, that's Warrior. Yeah, so it's not good into the aggressive decks, but it's beating up on the control decks that are trying to beat the Big Spell Mages.
That makes sense. I sort of initially, when the Mage wave was happening, and I was like, oh no, I wanted to play Mage. I can't play Mage. My first instinct was to gravitate towards, a kind of big hunter with Secret early game, just so that they had to kind of think twice about either when they played their coin or when they tried to play their big spells, because it could be the ice bounce your spell Secret. And if I started getting stuff down and getting large Hollow Hounds, then I would be able to come back. But those games might have been outliers.
Yeah, there was definitely a couple of games where I played against like 5 or 6 Hollow Hounds, and I was just like, that's too many Hollow Hounds. Like, they're not all those dogs are going to heaven. That's for sure. And
whoa.
I mean, all dogs go to heaven, but those have already clearly proven that they're not going there because they're undead. So,
see, the soul already has. It's just an animated body. It's fine.
Okay, so the soul is a very good boy. What's left behind is not.
Yeah. And then, from there, it's just Paladin.
Yeah, but I mean, Paladin is a reasonable choice, right? I mean, you're again against the mages. You're probably getting run over because you're taking the few turns, but you have so much healing against everything else that if you're playing that into something like the Pirate Demon Hunter, you're fine. That's a 55% win rate at Legend. Like into Painlock. Painlock's like slightly unfavored. You're like 49%, but you can generally turn that matchup around, and you can beat things like the Odin Warrior is like 62%. The random Insanity Warlock that's hanging around. So you have never mind. I'm not even gonna dignify Plague Death Knight by acknowledging its existence, but like you're also beating the hunters and stuff like that, right? Yeah. So like you have good matchups into the other things that are not necessarily the Big Spell Mage, and even the Big Spell Mage is still going to have to hit before you hit, and you hit much more consistently than the Big Spell Mage is consistent, but the Hand Buff Paladin is more consistent in being able to do what they do. That just the problem is that their hitting takes a couple of turns to be able to start paying off, whereas the mage hitting pays off immediately.
Right.
And then if they freeze your face as the Hand Buff Paladin, then it's a bad time.
Yep. Yeah. No bueno. But I mean, that's kind of the back and forth. You may notice that, hey, these are a lot of options, and like they all have different things they hit. Yes. Like it is warped. There is the most popular thing, but by no means does that suggest that you have to be able to beat Mage to play in this meta. I think it's just, this is kind of a more polarized type of meta, right? It is you can play anything, but you're going to have some good matchups and some bad matchups.
Yeah.
Or you can play Overheal Priest and lose because it's hard.
Yeah. And you can win against everything once you're done losing against everything.
Right. Yeah.
But and like, you know, it's fair to feel like Big Spell Mage is frustrating to play against and or boring. I feel like it's boring to play against like the regular version. I enjoy the orb version, but like the regular version is just, it's boring to play against because it does the thing and it's like, here I am. But like there is something for every play style in this meta right now. If you're willing to accept that there are going to be some frustrating games against Big Spell Mage and that's not going to be forever. But there is actually a pretty good meta underneath the surface, but you're going to have to look for it and then just be able to put up with the warts of this meta. And every meta has warts. I think some are just more prevalent and obvious than others. And this is one of the ones where it almost reminds me of like when original Quest Rogue was really popular. And there was like a lot of stuff happening below Quest Rogue, but it was and Quest Rogue wasn't even that great. After a while, like there were plenty of counters, but the problem was that it felt really frustrating when Quest Rogue would do Quest Rogue things and it didn't feel like there was anything you could do about it.
I mean, not quite to that extent, but I sort of feel like Druid has that position in the meta right now where it's like, yes, it can get murdered by the hyper aggro decks, but it makes any slower strategies question their existence when they face it. Yeah. Because, hey, look, I have 16 mana, you have 6. Multiple times this week I got like triple Doomkind, for all the problems that we've talked about extensively previously, right? Gets pulled with Dorian. The mana gain is relevant for more of the game because their cap is higher, and so it makes that gap larger. But yeah, it's just one of those times where I think perhaps the most important skill is managing your tilt, right? And figuring out what are you going to be able to handle losing to best, because everything has some matchups where they lose a lot more than they win, or a decent amount more than they win. And so if you're flexible with your deck choice, you maybe say, okay, which of these decks can I play? And like the losses will feel the least bad.
Yeah. Yeah. And ultimately, like, I mean, this goes for any time that you're playing, but it is even more so with what we're up against right now. Like, if you're tilted, feel free, like, take a break, right? Like, if you're not having fun, it's, that will happen. And then take a break for like, walk away for a bit. Like, I'm not saying for like a week, right? But like, if you want to play, like, keep playing, but just like, be mindful of your mental state, because it's very easy to spiral in this meta. And if you're not checking yourself to make sure that you're in a good mental state to play, then you're going to end up just spiraling into tilt. And then that's also going to affect how you feel about the games that you're playing, which I know that I'm speaking from experience because I've gone through that a couple times over the past few days. And like, also, again, I've been very open that I'm not in a mental state to play optimally with what's going on with me at work. So like, I'm already like, -10 from a starting point. And then, if I'm not actively monitoring myself, then I can just kind of spiral off and then like, say mean words to the computer monitor that my kids have heard me say a million times, but still I shouldn't hear me say them in that context. So,
I mean, that's basically the meta, the episode, short episode. We don't have these too often, but there's not a ton going on, and there's just the two of us. So that'll do it. We have many folks we'd like to thank. Check our thanks section on the website at Concede.com, where you can also find our contact info, our show notes, and our Patreon information. You can monetarily support our show at patreon.com/CoinConcede. Join us every week live by following us on Twitch at twitch.coinconcede.com. Join our community chats in our Discord at discord.coinconcede.com. And write into our email at coinconcede@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at CoinConcede. And if you'd like some CC swag, head on over to our shop at shop.coinconcede.com. CoinConcedes.
Well, I mean, I think we're both going to CoinConcede to Magesa And I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but I think that's pretty obvious, and
Yes.
and hope that everything goes well at the wedding and that everybody has a good time. And we miss you, and but it is for the best reason possible. And we can't wait for you to get back next week and hear all about it. I'm also going to coin concede to Clark because Clark has had a soap opera of a saga this week.
What?
Well, so he apparently played a gig where King Plush and the beach ball from the creator kit were guest starring. So he had some pictures on his Twitter that King Plush was like strapped to one of the instruments, like zip tied to one of the instruments.
Oh no.
And there was like a pool at wherever they were performing, and the beach ball was in the pool. And long story short, they finished the gig and the beach ball was gone. And
the massive
beach ball.
Yeah, okay.
Right. And so obviously he was very upset. I would be too. I mean, it's irreplaceable, right? I mean, it's something that it's not like you can go to the store and buy another one.
Mhm.
But come to find out today, somebody found the ball and returned it to him. So he has been reunited with his beach ball. So I am very sorry that he's had to go through that roller coaster of emotions, but I am glad that he is reunited with his beloved, and hopefully they will never be separated again. But
to be clear, like I could fit inside these beach balls.
It's a big.
They're insane. I don't know how I'm gonna blow it up next time. I half killed myself trying to do it before.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you need to get your asthma under control before you can really, do that again. So
I need some kind of pump.
I mean, actually, that might be good practice, to like lung training. I don't know.
Yeah, I used to play midfield in soccer to strengthen my lungs when I was a kid, and all that work went out the window when I got COVID. But my coin concede this week is going to be to my brother because he has graciously. It's sometimes hard for me to tell how much is him genuinely being interested and enjoying talking, and how much is him being fine with putting up with my just constantly talking to him about this D&D stuff.
Yeah. This is like when I'm driving, when I'm doing driving practice with my oldest, and she's telling me all about Final Fantasy 14 for the entire duration of the drive. Yeah.
But I mean, look, he's in the campaign I'm running, right? Obviously, at least we share the hobby. And although we like a very different kind of game, I really enjoy 5th edition D&D. He likes more rules light systems. But I'm very grateful to him for always being willing to chat about what I've got on my mind. And we send each other videos from various content creators and stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's going to do it for us for this week. So until next time, keep calm and dodge those tsunamis. And if you see us on ladder, coin concede.
Coin concede.
All life must end. I yield for now. I concede. Well fought. I concede.
You win this one.
The victory is yours.
You have bested me.
I give up.
You win this one, friend. You win this time. I choose death.